It's working? It's working?
Yep.
Thank you. Should we contact you to turn it off later, or?
I know how to turn it off. I don't know how to turn it on, that's all.
Okay, we're good.
Or switch it over, rather.
I don't even know where to begin. I don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, no, we don't need to get into that. Now, you said Holly is probably not going to be
Holly's
here.
sick today.
Oh, really?
She was gonna try and rally to be here, but I haven't heard that she's
I
able.
will attempt to take some notes unless anybody wants to take minutes officially.
Yeah, just take some just general notes. Remember, you had the video to back you up, so don't worry about it as
Right.
much.
We had that discussion Monday night with our first charter committee meeting.
Yes, yes.
As to whether we were going to take notes, and the charter says we have to elect a secretary, and, but yet,
Yeah.
we discussed the fact that it's being recorded, so,
Oops.
and Audra said that they have professional personnel or town personnel that can go over all the records to get any information, like wording on a motion or something.
Okay.
Like the selectmen's meeting do.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll just go through
Go ahead,
things.
Ray,
And
go ahead.
On the minutes, and just, if you'll see on the third page of the minutes, just for context, I added something near the end there about the, I just, for context, added in Rotary offered to build a playground with a snowball years ago, but it was turned down because,
because,
basically, it just didn't read correctly as to why.
oh, because.
Of the timing.
Because of the
I see,
time,
I
because of the
see,
timing.
I see, it's an insert,
Yeah,
okay.
because of the timing, that's all. Other than that, I didn't see anything else. Anybody else have that?
Nope.
Okay, when we get a fourth here, we can just plain approve that. If you notice, I sort of reorganized the layout of the agenda and everything, playing around to see how, but on the ski rates, when are you going to look at setting the ski rates and publishing them for the snowball this year?
They've already been voted on last January at the select board meeting.
Yeah, it's all done. Well, I think
See,
all
one of
we
the
usually
things,
just
one of the
set
things this
FYI,
committee.
We
I'm
try,
sorry.
sorry, we just said procedurally, we try to do all the rates, harbor rates, snowball rates, all about the same time. It's usually very early in.
It was
Jan-
January, yeah.
Right, okay. One of the, and then on that policy that was set up years ago regarding the Parks and Rec Committee, one of the things that the Parks and Rec Committee was charged with is advising the select board or through the Parks and Rec Committee on rates set for different the snowball, et cetera. Okay, and we had no input at all this year.
Well, again, what I would do is, to that effect that we discussed earlier, can you make sure you include those things on your work plan? Because right now, your work plan, remember, is really looking at all of the parks and what we proposed might be done and that kind of thing. Don't be afraid to add a bullet list of other things
Right.
on that work plan, and we can, so the select board can address it.
Right.
Actually, Ray, we did discuss it briefly when they were talking about adding in the free day for locals on Wednesdays.
Right.
And that was about the time we were talking about how is it going to affect next year.
Right.
So we talked
We
about
kinda
it briefly.
Did bring it up,
It
but
wasn't- we
I
didn't,
don't think it
but it
was
wasn't a big-
agenda item or anything, so.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Well, I
Audra?
think now's a good time if, you know, you want input into the fee order that's done in January to help prepare the budget. This is kind of the time for all of you to start talking about it and discussing,
For next year.
yeah, what you think it could look like or the big changes you'd like to see.
Right. Or if there are any. If there are
Right,
any.
well,
It's just more of a, I mean, I don't think over years that this committee has made any significant changes to the ski rates.
I don't think so.
It's more,
I don't think
little
so.
small suggestion here or there, so,
Fine.
okay.
Do you want me to report on what they did, what we did decide on?
On the ski rates, well, you basically said that it was the same as this previous year.
No, they said a 3% increase. That I could do a 3%
Right.
increase if I
Right.
choose. The lodge rentals went up to 600 instead of 500.
Right.
And that ski-free on Wednesday. I'm not sure if that was for last year. We started it right after that meeting.
We started it from that meeting into February or March, when we started in like 1st of February.
Well, I think this meeting was January 22nd, so we said February 1st.
And it didn't quite go that way. It went February 15th, and you
Yes,
changed the
however
date.
it went,
You
yeah.
changed the kickoff date.
But that wasn't for 2020 budget,
I think it still continues.
okay? And then a 25,
Not that we can't discuss it,
Right.
but it still, it stays the same.
a 25% reduction in the daily fee rate for Camden residents. So if a Camden resident doesn't get a season's pass and they choose to come out, they get 25% off the ticket of their choice, is what they voted on. A new or rebirth of the 2-hour ticket
Correct,
for $16 for Camden residents only,
correct.
and a 3% raise for season ticket prices for next season.
Across the board, right?
Yeah, and that was, nobody had any discussions.
Our season ticket rates are 2 different rates, correct?
Camden and non, yep.
Is it gonna be every Wednesday for ski-free Camden residents?
I don't, I think that's something we should
That was
discuss.
gonna be my question. I don't think it should be every Wednesday. I think it should be a promotional thing to get people out there. Do it very early in the season, offer a couple, and then maybe towards the end of the season. I don't think it should be every single Wednesday.
Well, right now it's established to be, start off, and we'll wait for Beth's and Audra's feedback on whether it's going well or not, because we can always make a change.
Well, and I think that, a couple of us were on this committee years ago when there was so much stress around
Right.
Snow Bowl and the redevelopment and losing
Right,
money.
right.
And so it feels like we've had a couple of great years, knock on wood, that'll continue, but there's a part of it that's like, oh my gosh, wait a second, we finally got things like, not we, me, but
Yeah,
it's stabilized,
totally.
and now it's like, we're gonna be giving everything, doing things, it makes me nervous.
I think the free Wednesday is great. Maybe do it 2 weekends a month, or 2 Wednesdays a month instead, because there's people who just can't afford to ski regularly. And if you want to entice them to be hooked, get hooked on it, or they think they can't afford it, let's put it that way. I think it's a great enticement, and there are a lot of costs for the Snow Bowl in general, and it's a way to get people on the side of the Snow Bowl. So I really,
Try to do it.
yeah, I mean, I'm one of those marginal people who, I used to ski a lot, I'm thinking of skiing more, but, I'd be enticed.
My only worry is that if we say right at the get-go that every Wednesday is free, we may lose
Right.
season
Well,
pass.
then
income.
Yeah.
do it every other Wednesday, maybe.
I'm, as I think you may know, not a big fan of giving a lot of stuff away. But I do think this is a good idea as a promotional thing, not as the whole freaking season. That just,
Nothing is forever. We
Yeah.
rely on Beth to come back with feedback that says, this Wednesday thing is a disaster, it needs to stop immediately. We're gonna listen. But right now, it's starting off that way, and I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, I haven't heard, the select board hasn't heard of any disasters the free Wednesday has occurred in terms of 2 months' worth only.
Correct, but we also we had already sold all our season's passes for the year when this got adopted. So those that are questioning or weighing, do I want to spend $7.99 for my family all winter? Or we're only skiing on Wednesdays, kids, that kind of thing. So,
Kids aren't gonna ski on Wednesdays because they have school. So
true, I mean, it does pigeonhole the person that can come out.
Maybe. The point is, we're guessing at all of this, absolutely guessing. Until we have fact, I doubt the rest of the board will respond, but they may, to you.
Right.
And so we ask that Beth and Audra continue to do the great job they're doing. To the success of the Snow Bowl, there is one challenge to the Snow Bowl: weather. And if you ever it's not about ticket rates, it's not about, if we don't get a good snow in December, she can't, the company can't make snow for Christmas, you're dead in the water, financially. So, all the things you can talk about how great the select board is, how great the committee is, or how great, it's all about weather. So keep that in mind, because I mention that because I'm not gonna be afraid when Beth comes and says, we're running south real deep here in January, we're gonna have to curtail the thing. We're gonna have to curtail it. based on, what we can do. This is a wonderful entertainment thing we have, and the town loves the hell out of it, even though it takes 1 million kilowatt hours per year, and we think we're environmentalists. No, seriously.
Oh, I know.
I'm sorry, it's a thing we love, and we're gonna keep it.
Right.
But we're gonna manage it, and that's where the success has been. I think Audra and Beth and company have done a great job of managing the cost of that thing and keeping their eye on it in accordance with the budget, to stay within budget. And they have, in fact, exceeded that expectation, but a lot of it was due to weather.
I would also just wonder about looking at the patterns. It feels like in the past with the changing weather, climate stuff, that we used to end sooner in March. It feels like we've had these later winters, and we've come up against this a couple times, or maybe it's even that's,
Yeah, we're committing to stay open through March,
yay.
if all
I
goes
know,
well.
right, yeah.
Thank you.
Weather pending and
Yes.
such, yeah. Snow.
Okay, fine. Anything else on the subject, open up on ski rates and everything?
Oh, the other one that was voted on was, we're increasing the locker rental.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be 100 for the season, and it's going up to 150. We didn't want to make a drastic increase.
Only 50%.
That's a 50%.
How many lockers are there?
41.
And they're all, it's a sold-out thing?
Yeah, and we have a 6 to 12 people waiting list every year. Basically, the way it works is if you had it last season, you get squatter rights, and you have until the end of November to let us know.
Yeah.
And then we do a lotto, literally a lotto. We pull a name out of a hat and say, do you want this? And they say yes or no.
Is there any reason to look into getting more lockers?
I don't know where we
Or
put
is
them,
there,
Mark.
is there a place?
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of research along with Andrew at Side Country. We're thinking about how we could have an outdoor locker room. And they make these ones that you can just attach your skis.
Oh, yeah.
Or they go in this way and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just the ski. You
Yeah.
have to bring you still have to schlep your boot and
Skis
stuff.
and poles can go in.
But they're super expensive, so it's
Really?
kind of still, yeah. Andrew would like to just put it in a shed and have them have
Yep.
those type of
Yep.
cubbies.
Yep.
And that the shed itself is locked. Security wise, I
Yeah.
cringe at that. But, and I don't know if we have a space for another shed. I mean, that's the other thing. When are we running out of space? No. We've been talking about it, Mark.
Right.
Just a thought.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the minutes real quickly, since we have a quorum now. And and you'll have on your copy on the third page of the minutes that there's a change that I suggested making just for context. If everybody had a chance, Holly did send these around, so if everybody had a chance to look at them already, I'll take a motion as soon as you looked at them.
I'll move that we accept them as amended.
Yeah. Second. All in favor? Okay, good. Audra, is there something that you wanted to say to this committee, or?
No, I haven't been here in a long time, so I thought I would come and sit in and
Okay,
help where I'm.
right,
What's that?
Enjoy the festivities.
Enjoy the company.
right, okay. Grant opportunities, we talked
Yes.
about that last week as far as what might be some possibilities for
Yes.
swings, et cetera.
Yeah, so I reached out to Jeremy after the meeting last month, and the Land Water Conservation Fund may be a possibility during the next round, but we need to finish our Riverwalk piece before we can apply for anything more.
Okay.
Also, he said that the Maine Community Foundation may be another source of funds. And he said that he just found out that Hannaford Charity Foundation does fund playgrounds. But he'd need to find out more about that. So this came up because our Lake Beach swing sets are failing.
Think?
Yeah.
The swings
They've,
on them.
they've gotta be 30 years old,
Yeah,
the
at
best that I
least.
can come up with.
At
Yeah.
How long have the swings actually been off the frame?
This season. The frame has split where it goes into the ground. And so we just don't want to take any chances of anyone getting hurt. We were only allowed to have the baby swing that you put them into, because we never had the wood chips, so we were grandfathered to only have that kind of swing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we were discussing whether we want to keep the swings, fix the swings, throw around an idea of a new playground set somewhere, what we want to do. So we were reaching out to Jeremy to see if there were any grants for that. But I know you know a lot about,
Yeah, there are a lot of grants out there for playgrounds in general. And, in terms of the whole future tannery playground, the Lions Club had offered to contribute to that. So I hate to see you go after that money for another one, but there are, these playground companies, that's how they sell their playgrounds. They partner with grants.
Yep.
So there's a ton of them out there.
I think a big.
And I think it's a good idea to have,
Right.
to have a playground.
Oh, yeah, and I think a big concern is, do we just replace what we have, which is a little swing set, or do we make it a really nice, bigger swing set with chips, et cetera?
and is that the right location?
Yeah.
Well, and is it swings necessarily, or is it some other kind of a play space? There's wonderful natural play spaces that they create, primarily in Europe, Scandinavia, where it's much more sort of adventure-oriented, and you don't have hard metal, plastic covers, all this stuff. They create a natural playground.
We had a workshop on that. You must,
Yeah.
did you attend?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So I forgot
Yeah.
about that. But yeah.
Well, and Belfast has one.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
in my opinion, something like that, I think it may require less ongoing maintenance, which is probably a good thing. And it might be, again, go along with the sort of the greenness of what we're trying to do in sustainability, pardon me, and all of that kind of stuff, as opposed to, we think of swing sets as being very traditional. We all grew up on them, and, most of us lost a tooth on them, right? That was the joke. That was the joke.
Wait, that was the teeter-totter.
You
Witches hat.
fried your butt on the
Ray,
Yeah.
steel slide.
excuse me, put it on the work plan also, Lake Beach.
Yeah, so I think
Discussion
I think
about
we
that,
can
too.
have a broad view of possibilities there.
I think would be great to have a small playground there. I don't think we would want a large playground there because parking is too much of an issue.
It's a
and
huge slope.
Yeah.
And the big feature there is the water.
Yeah, it's not amenable, the site is not amenable to a lot. And it might be that the easiest thing to do is just to fix or replace the like with like and just say, baby swings, that's what we've got going on there.
But in some ways, that, like Deering Oaks Park, because they have a slope, they've built slides into the slope. It's so cool.
It is cool.
So that would be.
Down
this
in
is it.
Portland?
Deering Oaks.
As you're driving by before you see Hadlock Field, there's that big park.
Yeah.
Oh, Andrew.
Perfect for that.
Well, that would be pretty exciting, I think. To do something like that, take advantage of the surroundings and make it something that would be.
Just don't make it such an attraction that everybody that wants to go to a playground just goes to that one because you don't have enough room to do the swimming with the added people that would come just for the playground. That'd be and when you have the tannery as a huge open space that we're looking for
I
things.
think if it were to be terribly crowded, people would tend to go elsewhere. I think that's gonna be
It's called
Leveling.
natural control,
Selection.
natural selection.
Yeah, just don't make it too big.
But I agree, if you made it an adventure park,
Yeah.
that would be a different.
And the other piece of that is we talked about if we're gonna do anything to Shirt Tail, would that be a better location to have a playground?
On that note, so what I was about to bring up, we have the physical metal frame sitting at
Lake
Lake
Beach.
Beach. We have the physical metal frame sitting at Shirt Tail.
Yep.
Do we have a liability issue with just them being there, even if there's nothing on them?
Nobody touches them. There's
Yeah,
nothing- I mean,
but-
at least the one at
I know
Church
the one
Hill.
at Shirt Tail is completely
Yeah, there's nothing you can do with
back
it.
out of the way.
That one got put, that's the same issue. I bet it was the same time we put we put both of those swing sets in, don't you
Probably.
think?
So is that frame broken at Churchill?
It's rusty. Those swing sets are old.
They are very strong. They were, we talked about them 25 years ago when I was on this committee.
There's no liability there.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'm happy to have the crew go and remove them.
You know, it's no different than a kid climbs a thing and it breaks to climbing a tree, and they say you didn't maintain the tree, so it's the same kind of liability as that. If you want to, fine, you get rid of it.
Yeah, I would,
I know Brian said the last time, if you know, why leave it if there's a chance we could bring it back, but
yeah, I mean, if it would be great to not, because these things take time, I would love to see us make a small investment in getting some, fixing what we have and getting the swings up there now, because it may take us 2 or 3 years to be able to change it, and we can't capture those back, is my feeling, but that's just me.
I'll look at what the cost will be to replace baby swings.
I agree with that completely.
I agree too. Yeah, if-
Could you look at the cost for wood chips too, just in case,
Well, I think we could get wood chips. It's just, once you change, so there's all these ADA requirements. Once you've changed what it's been,
Right.
then you gotta make sure they can access it, and that there's something for everyone to do there.
So just adding wood chips would do that?
If you, well, adding bigger kids' swings, I think would do that.
Big kid swings, little kid swings, and consideration for ADA.
Okay.
So, can we make a motion that we recommend do the maintenance piece and look into that and see if it could be wedged into,
You just made it.
okay, good.
I'll second it.
This year's budget, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
I'll report next meeting on that.
I mean, as far as, I think we're concerned, if you can find the money to do it and can get it done, don't bother bringing it back, just do it.
I don't even know what a swing set costs
I
these
don't know
days.
either, but,
A commercial one.
well, it just, can we fix onto that? Is that solid enough? Can Rockport Steel fab a new pipe to go around it? Can we just dig it into the ground, bring it up around what's there and throw a new set of inexpensive swings, spend $2,000 on this thing, and it'll be good for at least 5 years. It buys us time to get a great plan in place.
All right, I'll reach out to Rockport Steel too.
So you have a
for
motion and a second.
Second,
Yeah,
okay. You want to repeat your motion? That,
That we recommend that Beth find funding and execute repair to the kiddie swings.
Utilize the existing frames for addition of swing elements that can get us a temporary Band-Aid till we do a future.
Right, while we look to a future project improvement.
okay. All in favor?
The data point is $2,000 for a 3-seater.
Oh, you just found that?
Yeah.
And what's the installation cost? Because you gotta dig
I
down
know,
cement,
just for the
there's a
swing,
lot of
that's
things that go into it.
$2,000
And the cement that they're currently probably in,
Yep.
because back then they used to do a huge footprint.
All right.
$3,000.
Another thing that we talked about last meeting were the condition of the mountain biking trails and any maintenance that need to be done on them at Ragged Mountain. At the last meeting, we talked about that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it was brought up. I don't know,
That's
Mike, you're here.
I
Yeah.
saw Mark last night, Mark told me it was on the agenda, so that's the only reason I came.
Right. And just what is being done or needs to be done.
My recollection is at the last meeting, there's a recognized need to maintain them because they tend to go south on their own and can
Right.
create erosion
Yep.
issues. And then John raised a concern about, well, if we do any work to maintain them or improve them, which I think are two different things, then, do we need site plan review, and planning process and all of this? It's my understanding that when we maintain the current trails that we have, we don't go through that. We mow the lawns, we fix water bars, we
Right.
do all of those things on the ski trails. These trails are the same way. I don't see why we need to go through an onerous process to maintain the current trails, because the people that are doing it have a vested interest in doing it in a way that doesn't blow out, because they don't want to have to do it again later. And they're as professional as we can probably afford to do, to maintain what we have, separate from trying to develop beginner trails in the, going forward.
And in the minutes from last meeting, the $10,000 that was budgeted last year was used for other purposes to fight the erosion out there. So what is in our budget for this year for the maintenance?
I put some money in there. It's not another full 10, though.
Okay. So,
I think that it's about 3. But this was on the agenda last month because we were talking about what the Coastal Mountain Land Trust is doing to widen that current trail that we have to start the Round the Mountain. And so it's an existing trail, it's just getting widened. And that did bring up the question of a site plan review with DEP. And Jeremy and Audra and I have committed to do a site plan review and for,
Site law,
site law, sorry, yeah, site law.
Yeah, we're like really close, if not frankly, over the developed acreage to trigger site law. And instead of kind of always being on that edge and always being concerned about every single little thing we do there and whether or not we're bumping up against site law, we've said, and we've brought this to the select board, let's just get it permitted under site law, then we have our permit, and so that it gives us the flexibility moving forward to add more mountain bike trails or that.
Maybe a shed,
Or, you know, whatever the case may be. So I think that that's something that going into the preparation for the FY '21 budget, we should all be.
And we're looking at about $30,000 to do that.
And that's the section of the trail that would be on,
All the snowball.
Whole snowball.
so does that include?
Everything
Mountain
existing.
bike trails?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Again, I don't know, it's kind of like the swing set. I don't know that we should let better be the enemy of good. In that, to me, it seems crazy that we don't allow the mountain bike community to maintain the existing trails. They're ready, willing, and able.
We do.
Well, coming out of the last meeting, they were told they said they couldn't maintain the trails, they couldn't touch the trails.
No, I don't remember that.
I think when we talked about, as I recall, when we talked about going forward and Brian and I had brought up, well, look, there's a lot of people willing to help. I think the concern was like, well, we can't rely on volunteers. That's how I remember it. We can't rely on volunteers to be doing this.
So I guess the question is there a problem with volunteers maintaining the existing mountain bike trails? If there's not,
No,
I'll communicate that to the mountain bike community.
Right.
not at all.
No.
And then, we have do we have some, you said we have a few $1,000s there in the budget that might be for materials. that-
Might
Yep.
be.
So could you get back to the committee with what that is so we can share, or you can share that with, I'm not sure, it's not Morgan.
Well, you have to be a little careful with what kind of repairs you're talking
John,
about.
yeah.
Is it right, what's the organization up there
McNemba.
that's doing the round the mountain
Mid-Coast
trail?
Nova?
Oh, no, the coastal land
To make
trust.
sure they understand what we're doing to trails, because that doesn't want to fly against what they're doing.
Well, yeah, the trails are not, they're completely separate. It's not trails that are
Part of the
part
Mountain
of
Mountain.
the coastal mountains,
Right.
Round the Mountain Trail.
Oh, it's not part of that?
No.
Oh.
No, mountain biking
Cool.
trails are
Right.
completely separate from
Got
the
it.
Round the Mountain.
I think that one of the concerns was that any maintenance of the biking trails doesn't include a change of the footprint of the trails, basically. That it's basically the existing trails and that they're not expanding in this area or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that should be made clear, perhaps in a memo saying, this is what is okay.
Yeah, there's no more going rogue out there
Right,
and building new trail.
Right,
exactly.
Yes.
okay, okay. Going on,
Why not?
Yeah, question, two things. I was talking with, I think, Andrew the other night about some of the trails that are being adapted for beginners by going in and eliminating, I don't know, the technical stuff,
Yes.
the stuff. And is that considered major change, or is that just considered upgrading, or is it allowed?
I think right now, until we do this site law, we're not allowing anything new because we don't know how many acres we've actually disturbed.
Maybe for, you know, if somebody has a project in mind, I think that, they always need to go to Beth
Yeah.
and speak to her about it.
Right.
Beth can tell them what they can and can't do.
Andrew, do you have anything you'd like to add into this or request to talk about, or?
I mean, this is all stuff that I've talked to Beth and Audra about in the past, and, you know, I think we're all on the same page about we're not developing any new trails, we're just improving the existing trail network there. The one comment that I would say is that we've run into, this year, we've actually had a couple injuries come off the hill, where some of the people that are riding bikes there are rerouting unsafe areas. And now the reroutes, some people are removing them because it's been how it's always been. And there's one safety issue kind of on the Hull Red Trail climb that goes next to the river over by Five Brooks on the right.
Yeah.
And it's been blocked off, and then someone removed it, and then someone fell 6 feet down into the water, and they had to go to the emergency room. So, like, you know, there's stuff happening there that people are, you know, going ahead and doing these things without any approval. And what we would like to see is the vendor out there, and we're distributing the bikes, and we're basically the concierge service for everyone that's coming out there. Because we're telling them where they need to ride, where they can ride, where they can't ride, and everything else, is a plan for even these volunteers, like these NEMBA volunteers, to say, like, this section of this trail needs to be improved because it's completely eroded and blown out, and it's unsafe to ride at the moment. This is where our focus should be, instead of letting these volunteers just go and do whatever they want, and that's what's currently happening. And I feel like, whether it's through the office, whether it's we draw a map together, like we sit down and have a meeting and we draw a map and we identify the areas that need to be, you know, worked on, and then whether it comes through Side Country Shop where because we're gonna be there on regular hours, not necessarily the same hours that the ladies are in the office. So if the volunteers come and check in there, and we can keep a log of who is doing what, when, then you have a record of trail maintenance that's happening from the volunteer corps. Now, I'm saying that volunteers only go so far. I'm glad that the town's put a little bit of money in the budget for, you know, materials, and, you know, I'm gonna take Tom and Mike on a ride, I think Thursday afternoon after work, to show them, because there's a couple bridges there that we've just got a bunch of material donated to fix. They're tilted like this, and they're off camber, and they just need to be reset and rebuilt up, and there's just a lot of ongoing maintenance that's not happening.
So maybe, we get together with you and, McNemba Morgan and come up with a plan.
I think it would be great, and then I think, you know, once I go out with Tom, maybe he can build into his schedule, maybe a couple, you know, hours here and there for the guys to shuttle equipment or wood that we've gotten donated up to the trailheads, so the volunteers don't have to, you know, carry all that heavy lumber up
Yeah.
to replace this bridging. I think that's the only comment we have, is that just, there's a lot of stuff going rogue out there, and it's happening a lot, and there's a lot of unsafe areas of riding right now.
Andrew, we do have plenty of caution tapes and signs and ropes and things that our ski patrol uses.
That was
We
gonna
need,
be,
if we need to shut down a part of the trail, we can do that. And it would be good if we had trail closures, that we had a spot for it, either on wherever they can see the map, or where people
I think it's
go.
awesome, like, we need to get a kiosk built, like, by the base lodge area that we have that new map, and we have it,
Yeah.
you know, it's all laminated, it's huge, and we can mark it up with a dry
Yeah,
erase marker.
totally.
I just need to know, is that on us to do, is that on you, like, who?
So there's the kiosk at the gate, that McNemba has a
But
spot.
no one stops there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's,
Nobody stops there.
I think what you're suggesting makes sense. It's very much like what we have for the ski season. There's the whiteboard when you come in, and people do stop, because I see them, it's right outside this patrol, and they're looking to see what's open. They don't quite use so much the one that's in front of the lodge, but then there's the one at the top, and people go and look at that map. And if we were to have that wherever it might, rest, and maybe it's under the overhang.
The other issue is though, that the trails aren't signed right now. All the signs that NEMA put up about 4 years ago have all fallen down. So there aren't any markings on the trails, like what trail you're on, how you get over to here. Like, those of you who have been riding it for years and years
Right,
know.
we know.
But the people who are coming to the Snow Bowl now are coming for the weekend and you have no clue where you are. So you're getting lost. We're getting phone calls from the top, like, how do I get down?
Well, so maybe part
I
of
get phone calls over on Rollins. I'm at number 3. How do I get out?
So
Get
it
out your bike
sounds,
and walk.
That sounds like a, kind of a priority to get some temporary or permanent signage out there fairly quickly.
yeah, it would seem, if we're talking about this coordinating effort and establishing a list of priorities, safety should be number one. Anybody
Yep.
disagree with that? And part of that would be signage, so people don't get lost, because that's the black eye we don't want. Someone getting hurt in the creek and having a permanent disability because they couldn't call out, because they couldn't reach their phone, because it was 6 feet up the slope, or whatever. It's gonna go to the quality of the experience and encourage people to come back and maybe contribute or what have you. Do we have that brings up the next point. We don't have a fee structure for using this at all at this point, not even a voluntary fee structure. Is that something that anybody would be opposed to have a donation bucket to go towards, maybe towards the maintenance of this stuff, that would go towards materials, that we could
If it
keep?
was a donation, I think when we start having a fee, we become liable.
Right, and I think in the future that we may go that way, but is anyone opposed to a donation thing? Maybe it's something that Andrew would be amenable to having there, where people are coming in and getting stuff, because point of service, as Andrew said, it really, if you're coming to mountain bike, probably we don't want people coming up and knocking on the door for you all, because it's not, it's a part of what we're doing there, but it makes more sense probably to go to Andrew to get a map, get the information and go out, and so that's the point of contact. If we have a gallon jar there and Andrew totals it up, if we can trust him to do that, once a week he can give it to Beth and we get a couple of $1,000 at the end of the season.
I think the model from Kingdom is the Kingdom Trails, it's a totally voluntary. People don't have to pay to ride.
Voluntary
But it's a voluntary sticker that you buy every year that's year, and you collect your stickers, and it's $30 for a sticker for the year, and all of your money goes to trail maintenance. And it's all voluntary, and, you have the investment of the sticker, but, and then you see bikes come in that have years from 2009 all the way to 2019 for Kingdom Trail. So it's one way to go, and, and I think once you see enough stickers out there, it kind of takes off. And
There's another model that I was gonna interject too, which is almost the same, and they've added another layer, which is they have voluntary sort of hospitality people, which are the regular riders. And those guys are licensed, sort of, to say, hey, did you get a permit yet? Just sort of doing that. And the other thing they do is they monitor the trails. So the system that you're talking about where, hey, this trail needs the honorary volunteers, which you have to apply for, which is a higher up thing. So you're wearing, it's sort of a pride thing, this is part of what I do as a volunteer, is I ride around and it's cool, and do you need some help, are you lost, blah, 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 blah.
It's not as official as Ski Patrol.
No, it's
But
not.
it's like,
It's like national.
you're wearing the T-shirt that says, I work here. Yeah.
It says volunteer.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they have a little sticker too.
yeah.
I think I think the ridership takes care of people
It
with
does.
stickers, you're riding, and if all your friends have it and you haven't bought it, it's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing over here? You're not participating in helping us out, you're
Using the
trying to
help-
do what
Help
we're doing.
support what you're doing, yes.
It's kind of like keeping all your old ski passes to,
Exactly.
so.
Exactly.
Okay.
So is that something that we again could authorize the parties to have as part of that plan of work that we're developing, which would be some sort of opportunity for people to make voluntary contributions, whether it's a donation bucket or a sticker system that could be established?
Or both.
Or,
Yeah, or both.
As long as it's not solicited.
right,
I thought I heard some, the conversation says, encourage people to donate. It has to be completely.
We can make them aware of the opportunity, they can still donate. That's the
Yeah.
terminology we
Right.
gotta have.
You can hand flyers out, stuff
I mean,
like that too.
If you-
Invest in the product, invest in the future of
Is
it.
that something that seems like it could be workable as part of that conversation from the town perspective?
Absolutely.
Andrew, from yours?
Is it late in the year to get that in place?
Yeah, this wouldn't be for this.
No, no. I
I mean,
mean,
this year it's probably a bucket.
right. Yeah, but the idea of having a kiosk with a map of the biking trails on it, and you could put next to it a donation, no, there are some very good ones at,
Slot on top.
what do you call it, at Camden Hill State Park, the entrance off of Youngtown Road. We have them over at Mary Spring, and they're just basically a donation box. You put it, and it has to be secured and locked so that you don't have somebody trying to take it away. And there you would capture the ones who come, hey, this is my first time here, this looks great, throw a donation in. I'm not saying we're gonna make $1 million doing that, but it would be worth it just to have that. But I think it would be good if the conversation, if McNemba really comes up with a program for maintenance of that, instead of us telling them what to do, because they know the trails, they know what needs to be done, and the volunteers. So if they really outline, here's
They would
what,
seek approval
right,
to
Yeah,
do
this
that
is
based
what-
on the needs that
Right.
they'd have to present a convincing argument
Yeah.
as to why this.
Is going through some changes right now, like, I don't know if that's necessarily the group to go to. I mean,
Okay.
they're definitely, but their focus isn't just necessarily the Snow Bowl either.
Right.
Like, they're all of this
Yeah.
whole area, so they're doing Thomaston,
Yeah.
they're doing Sagamore Farms, they're doing like a bunch of different,
yeah.
Big in the bog right now.
yeah, they're doing a lot in the bog, so,
You're the one that's right here,
I
right
mean,
now.
yeah,
so-
again, we're happy to help. I want to work with Beth and Tom and getting it so where the town feels that everything's covered and everything's.
And maybe it's a subgroup of McNemba that wants to focus on the Snow Bowl and Sagamore as because those are the two town properties that they're wanting to access.
But I'm gonna, if there's no objection, I'll contact Kingdom, and I'm also gonna contact the University of Oregon or something. They have a similar issue out in Oregon, and I've talked to them about that
Okay.
too, run by volunteers, and I'll get a couple of different models and say, this is how it works, this is how the liability works, this is how the fee structure works, this is how the volunteers work, this is how they got it organized,
Yeah, good,
and I'll let you know.
all right. Good, okay, fine. Running down the list on the tennis courts, how is the condition of them this year?
The rubber membrane where we filled the cracks is getting pretty shabby. That was also on my email to Jeremy, because it was an original land water conservation fund.
Yeah.
It was funded and built in '70s. And they, like I said, last meeting, they like to give back to projects that they originally did, so that could be a possible grant opportunity. Plus, we do have that reserve account that's got $26,000 in.
Right, but eventually we're gonna have to rebuild those tennis courts.
Are people still playing tennis on them? Okay.
There's one of the two courts is better than the other one, yeah.
Again, as we think sort of this long-term planning, and because there is matching stuff that you have to do for those land water conservation grants, maybe we need to take this view and say, our goal is to be able to rebuild those in 3 years, and start a campaign, if you will, engage some volunteers, because the tennis community, there are some people that are very committed, they're out there very regularly.
And is very committed, and the Spencers.
Yep, right, maybe, Jan and
Yeah.
whatever, Spencer, maybe they could coordinate and do some, sort of plan some fundraising, so we say, hey, this is, let's plan on, in 3 years, our goal is to rebuild this thing, let's make it a reality, so we've got the volunteers, we've got the town, we're working on the grant side of it.
Yeah.
It all comes together with enough funds to be able to do it really well, so that it lasts for another 30 years or
Well,
whatever.
yeah, but in parallel, you have to define how much funds is required.
Right, but they could decide themselves how much they wanted to raise. They could say, hey, we want to raise 10 or 15,000.
Across 150,000, doesn't do the town a hell of a lot of good.
But it does the town 15,000 worth.
Yeah, no, don't get, again, put this in your work plan, the idea of what does the tennis courts required, what is required to fix them, we need to know that.
Yeah, and we have a figure from a couple of years ago.
Right.
When it was like 75K or
That's what I
something.
figured, it was 75, 80.
90, okay, so
Yeah, it's about
10
right.
now or something, but you're right, Bob, I mean, but I don't think that it's incompatible.
No, it's not, and that creative funding is always a great idea, and that's,
But engaging people now rather than waiting until the year we're gonna do it, seems like they'd have more success, maybe.
Yeah, okay, all right. Jeff, want to update us on disc golf proposal?
Sure, I've had a pretty busy month this month. I've done a couple fundraising little things up down at Cuzzy's. Nice to have that place in my pocket. But I've raised enough money. I have 9 baskets sitting at my house right now.
Wow.
I am starting to procure stacks of disc golf discs, and I'm hoping to start installation this week.
Okay,
So, and I have.
temporary.
Temporary, it's all a very temporary
Okay.
course. I'm not putting any concrete down, I'm not putting any T-pads down.
But you're gonna be able to lock it and feel secure?
I'm basically gonna do like giant lawn staples to staple the baskets into the ground, just so that they don't get knocked over and.
Yeah.
God forbid
Do you
somebody
have a
take over.
layout yet that you've confirmed with the people out
I
there?
have, I've secured a map, which has all of the mountain biking trails on it, hiking trails and ski slopes on it, so I'm currently trying to design the course around those trails, so that we don't have any problems with any hikers, mountain bikers, or anything like that. Once I have that done, of course, you guys are gonna get a copy of it.
Awesome.
But that's where I'm standing at right now. I'm in touch with Innova, Discraft, Latitude 64 discs, and what's the last one?
Whammo?
Actually, Whammo's the company that started this whole sport.
Have you,
That's why he knows.
Little
it was
platter.
Frisbee Pie Company.
Okay,
Have you got a date or a weekend or a timeframe planned for we're shooting for this date to have our
demo.
demo?
I had one, and a couple of my, because like you guys asked, I've gotten a committee, sort of committee together, and a couple of the people that were gonna help me with the installation and stuff, some family emergencies have come up, so I'm currently kind of redoing everything to get this back on track and get it up there as fast as I possibly can.
It would be
I'm about
great if we
3
could
months behind.
tie it in to our Sunday chairlift, pancake breakfast and chairlift rides.
Yeah,
September?
And we can announce it. It's all Sundays in October.
There's also that Baxter event.
And, yeah, the Trail Fest.
Just like September 9th or something?
No, it's October 5th.
Yeah, first.
Oh, it's the main outdoor film festival?
Yes.
Is the 8th.
So there's at least 4 great weekends in October that we could push the demo and we can help you advertise it.
Like I said, I'm looking to start installation this weekend. I'm hoping if I can get my transportation and my crew back together, get these
Yep.
little problems they have set aside, and we'll be going at it. And
So when you have your locations kind of pinned on a map, myself and Tom should probably walk with you
Yeah.
and look it over.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Audra.
Thank you for being here.
That's great news.
Good, good. If at all possible,
Contracts between myself and the town for
Yeah.
you guys, those
Right.
are
Yeah.
they're starting to get
Right.
written down now.
yeah. I mean, if at all possible, if we could shoot for that October 5th date, because you're gonna have other people out there, it'll be an additional draw to get more people out to the Snow Bowl for those activities, so.
Last year, the rides,
Oh,
waiting line, give them
Yeah.
something to do while they're waiting in line.
Yeah.
We've actually been in contact, speaking of the October rides. I've had several nonprofits approach. As you know, the ski club makes the money off the pancake breakfasts. Last year, they're done at 10:30. Last year, we had so many people riding the lift that they were coming down looking for anything to drink, anything to eat. They were begging for stuff. We talked with Mark the Bagel Cafe and said, you know, are you interested in doing a lunch, doing something that day? I want to, we have to give him first dibs because there's other nonprofits looking to get in to do something. Because there is a giving crowd. Right now, we're looking at maybe doing 3 choice lunch bags that they can go up and have a picnic and kind of push that to the crowd. We also thought about maybe some kind of like Oktoberfest beer tent idea once they're down. So we're throwing around some ideas just to build the day a little bit more.
Disc golf will help.
Yep. So what you're saying
Beer will go well with that.
it sounds like Mark is interested. so
Mark is
you'd be
interested.
saying no to other groups or nonprofits, yeah.
And-
At this point, if it falls through with Mark, I may open it up to somebody else.
Ski Patrol is interested in perhaps doing something, because we have to be there anyway for
The ride.
lifted back and all of that. And we now have the deck at the summit to have, you know, some water and stuff that people could donate for or what have you, maybe
Yeah.
some brownies or something. So there's a little something up there, because we have to remain on site until everybody's off the lift anyway. It wouldn't be a replacement for a bag lunch or whatever, but it would be a supplement that you might access up there to raise funds for bandages or whatnot.
Yeah,
Okay,
sounds good.
good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna skip around on a couple things here on this one. Very quickly, Pathways Committee, anything to update us on?
Let's see, the couple related things are, did Nico call you? Did Christian get in touch with you?
Nobody's getting in touch with me yet.
All right, I just poked him again. He would be a good guy to help you in lots of ways.
Christian Winkelhofer.
Yeah, Christian Winkelhofer. And,
Yep,
I know
Brother.
Tony real well.
brother.
because he's got a, yeah, he's into it. The RTP and finishing and being able to apply, that is due September 30th. I don't think you'll make it, but we will definitely be in a position for
Next
the
year.
following year.
Yep.
What's that for? That's a grant?
Recreational Trail Program.
That's
grant.
what the
Yeah.
town is hoping to use to possibly secure some funding, maybe for the swing set or what,
Oh, okay.
I don't know if it'll work for that.
Not for the swing
But you
set.
had talked about RTP for something. Anyway,
Yeah.
regardless, it's for any project, so we can't have more than one at a time going back there. And the reason is that the project, they're still working on it. But they are working on it, which is good, it's looking good. They've roughed in quite a bit of the trail, actually all the way up to the fence now, but they're thinking of building some extensions to it, some spurs to hook it up a little bit more. This is the section just upstream of Knowlton Avenue.
So the entry access is at that parking lot? or-
Correct. That's correct. That's at the parking lot, the new town,
That parking lot's lovely. Feel
It
free
is
to park
lovely.
there all day.
yes. And the other one is that we are trying we've put together a little work group with the Garden Club, the Downtown Design Group, and the Pathways Committee to offer to MDOT some streetscaping enhancements to a drainage project they're working on, which will be in the fall of next year. The drainage project is from Stop and Go down Route 1.
Could be earlier than that.
Down Route 1, could be later too.
Are you talking down through downtown, or?
Yes, down through downtown from Stop and
On
Go,
the east side only,
only on the far side,
if you call that east side, yeah.
the east side, northbound.
I mean, in front of Drowney Bear and all those places right there?
It'll be right next to the
Like their
sidewalk,
their sidewalk?
right down the Smoothie Shack, all the way down there,
As
all the
first
way
day.
down to the alley that goes down to the public landing, the alley being the little narrow one by Lily Lupin. And that's being redone too, so as part of that, they have to rip up the sidewalks, because that's right where the drainage goes. And
Oh,
so they're
it's
putting
gonna
the
be a
sidewalks
mess.
back in,
Yeah.
they're ripping up the sidewalks, so they're gonna put them back in the same basic footprint, but it's an opportunity.
Do we have
for-
any obstructions anywhere on those sidewalks?
None.
None.
Oh, perfect.
So They're
There are no
getting rid
issues,
of
there's no
telephone
nothing,
poles
no.
that
But
are
what are you
in the
doing, putting in a
sidewalks
bike lane?
and plowing and.
Anyhow,
We're not putting in a bike lane.
Oh.
No.
We're just trying to add some streetscaping,
What do you mean by streetscaping?
you know, flags and banners and fun things like that.
Some of the curbing around Camden National and that area's changed a little bit to make it more attractive. There's some of that, where they go with the landscaping, I have no idea.
Yeah, they
But,
have no landscaping built into it, and what we're specifically hoping for is that they put in maybe some holes in the concrete, in the sidewalks.
For
Yeah.
vegetation and trees.
Yeah, for like a tree that comes up and you put the grading over it and the tree grows in there. It just makes it more shady and nice. It makes it look nicer. That's what I'm
Gotcha.
talking about.
Right.
So it'd be plants.
Right.
It's a beautification
So
project.
beautification, that's a better word.
Now, is this going to be, hopefully, coordinated with sewer and power
Excuse
and,
me, but this is really not Parks and Rec.
yeah, okay, yeah, right,
It's
yeah.
not
Yep.
Parks and Rec,
But
this is
to
just
your
reporting
point,
to you.
the answer is yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
good.
it's all
Okay.
that's being done.
Okay.
So this
Wow.
is just a little piece of the puzzle that we're trying to get our toe into to
Absolutely.
make the pedestrian ways a little nicer.
Okay.
Make traffic visible for a few minutes.
Might as well.
Okay, fine.
And I think that's about it as it relates to this group.
Okay, fine. I'm just gonna go up the list here. Property tour, I put that down. Does anybody feel that we really need a property tour this year, or put it off until again next year?
Well, maybe if we look at our work list
Yeah.
and we pick 2 or 3 that we want to go and look at.
Yeah,
Yeah. One of the things I'm sure the select board's gonna wanna hear, whenever you wanna do it, is, look, we have this long list of stuff, and we think it might be in the order of magnitude of 50 to 75 or 5 to 10,000, but we think these are priority, because you can't work on them all, we know
No.
that. So, and that includes Lake Beach, that includes all the things we talked about, tennis courts, put it on there.
Okay.
But if you think, you guys think, that it's a good idea to walk a few of those and put more flesh on the bone, it'll help you when you
Okay.
come to the select board for approval.
yeah. Well, that's gonna
That's
go
your
in,
call.
that's gonna go in, have you had a chance at all to talk to any of the sports leagues about getting coming to a meeting?
No, because we talked about a September meeting time. You and I just need to decide,
Okay.
should we invite them just to the next Parks and Rec
And have
meeting?
that as the entire meeting, really? Okay, and I would.
Or do we
propose that.
need everyone, or do we just want 2 or 3 of you? I don't,
That's the sports field users.
yeah, and
I think-
coming up with a fee.
Well, discussion as to.
Discussion.
Discussion about fees or some way that they become more involved in helping with the maintenance of those fields, or setting aside money for maintenance of the fields.
Sooner rather than later, because
think
we've been
September-
pushing it off for years now.
I would suggest then we just have our, and that's why I put the property tour in here, is that we have our September meeting, if you think we can get them here at noon time, otherwise we've got to schedule it for like late in the day.
So that September should be the 11th.
Yeah.
We are at the Winter Summit up at Sunday
Okay,
River.
so we moved to September, the week after, September 18th?
We could.
But,
I was gonna say, I would suggest that,
Well, they may need an evening meeting.
yeah,
yeah, I would think that it ought to be a separate meeting with that, not of all of us, but anyone who wanted to come could be a part of it.
Okay.
Minimum representation, and then let people who have a particular, Mark gung ho, he wants to be there, great, he can go
yeah,
there.
okay, fine.
And not, because there's a lot of stuff that we've got on our plates as well.
Okay, so we'll,
And noon isn't a great
Okay,
time
fine.
for
no,
many people.
so September 18th will be our next Park Rec meeting, okay? And Beth, I think just if you can figure out with a couple of the representatives as to what day of the week would be the best time for like a 5 o'clock meeting or whatever, and make it for your schedule. And let me know, I'll make myself available, and whoever else on the committee can make it.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay?
Okay, great.
And everybody on the committee will be invited.
Okay, great.
Really, I mean, it won't be just.
I will send out an email this week, because I know all the users, and just ask them what
Yeah.
evening in September would work for them.
And CC me on it, please, okay? All right, great.
Ask them which, give them, these are the
I'll
two
give them,
options.
yeah, I'll give them 2
Because
options.
if you ask 5 people, all 5 will give you a different answer.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
Choose a doodle poll or
Going,
something.
going up the list here on the Village Green, I did not make the select board meeting about the issue that came up about users of the, wanted, like,
Oh,
some
yeah.
church group that
Yeah.
wanted to be able to use the
Oh.
village green for free. And the conversation from some of the members of this committee was, have we ever, joined in on that kind of a policy discussion? What was the, I didn't make that meeting, so what was the?
Excellent question, because, I'm not sure how clear it was to all of us in the first place, myself included. But when we pulled out the wording of the guide, I call it guidelines for the Village Green, written by somebody way back when.
Yeah, when it was
It's-
deeded to
It was
the town.
deeded.
It seemed pretty clear that that kind of usage was not restricted for, or need to require approval for use of the village green, because it's not quote-unquote an event. Now you get into the legal definition of what an event is, which is, another fuzzy. So that was the interpretation that came, that was not approved at the select board, it was not disapproved either.
They already had,
How do you
they already
deal-
had permission to be there.
How do you deal with it? I mean, just as a observer, when I've driven by, for a long time, I thought that those were chamber representatives welcoming people to the
Yeah,
community.
right. Yeah.
Like, I just worry about,
It's
no
free.
offense to any
No, understood.
belief system,
Understood.
but
Same
like,
here.
it,
It's
that's, for, I mean, that's where the tour buses drop people
Yeah,
off.
The problem is about, bottom line, it's about civil rights. And all the town is required to do, period, is to provide, if they don't want it to be a village green, we can provide some other space, but you must provide a space for them to do their thing, civil rights.
What did they want to do there, actually?
What they do is, this
wanted
is
to
Jehovah's
proselytize.
Witnesses, they sit there on a little table and they provide literature to anybody who's interested.
So does that mean any group can do that?
Any non-commercial group, as I understand it.
But keywords,
Now,
non-commercial.
the thing that
They
they've
can't
done,
solicit, they can't solicit money, they can't solicit period, but they could sit there, and if you wanted to sit there,
So they can't take donations?
correct.
well,
That would be commercial.
the one thing that we have done, we did it during the toboggan races last year, is what was the group that sat there and sold coffee and donuts?
Oh,
Japan trip, maybe?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Japan trip.
Yeah.
but that's commercial. That's clearly, they can't be there, for example,
Well, that's cool,
was
that was school
donation.
we also
donations.
approved the
That was
homelessness.
donation, yeah.
Yeah, the homelessness group has a sleepover one night, which we do approve, to be able to promote,
Okay.
awareness.
Awareness.
But they don't solicit funds, so we do allow that. But the soliciting funds would be commercial, that's not allowed. You can't go there and kids and sell lemonade technically, that kind of thing. But if you're interested, read the guidelines that are written in our town, on the town record for what can be approved and what can't be approved there. And clearly it falls, as I read it, this ain't an event we have the authority to approve or disapprove.
While we're on the Village Green, we, I got our water bill and it was $3,000 something
The Village Green.
for the Village Green. And so I called them up and I said, we need to have some kind of a red flag. If our water system isn't working and we're, drowning, we need to be, because they read the water meter quarterly. So they said that, yes, they will try and do a better job of getting in touch with us. So I wrote them a
There's an
letter
irrigation system?
that the garden club put in.
But the garden club doesn't pay the.
That's
water.
correct. So, when they went and read the meter, they saw that 15,000 gallons were being wasted daily.
Do we irrigate anything else in town?
Trees.
Well, that's a break in the irrigation pipe somewhere leading to a
That's a-
sewer. That's not,
What?
there's no way you could put 15,000 gallons on
of water.
that piece of land
Daily.
and not, daily, and not have it submerged.
Well, it's not daily.
That's what
You
it
just
said.
said daily,
That's what it said.
15,000 a gallon.
So anyway, when they read the meter, they were like, oh my gosh, so they shut it off.
Okay.
Called Tom, we went down, Tom investigated and found what happened. They are willing to work with us because we didn't know, because they only read it every 3 months. I had to write them a letter, I had to show them what we had to fix, I had to explain what happened. They said they would reduce the bill hopefully by half, because I told them that's my whole budget for this, for this park. Way more than what I have. So anyway, they're working with us, but there's gotta be a way that they can red flag things. They can say, whoa, what's this?
I had the same issue. I had a toilet that was running, and it wasn't in my section of the building, and I get a bill, the chart is here, 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 and here for that period.
Now, most of that can be read online, can't it? I believe
So
so.
when
Meter's electronic,
Okay.
Not the
CMP.
water meters, I don't believe.
and not.
water. So anyway, they're working with us, but I thought that was an interesting,
That's a waste of water, too.
Especially if it's flowing into the wastewater system.
Directly without even any,
Right, but, yeah, who knows?
Yeah, right.
Tom, anything new on Tannery?
Well, I'll just report what, I just had a conversation with Bob,
Oh,
basically.
and by the way, Tom, just to your conversation, on Tuesday night, there will be an agenda item talking about Tannery update.
Next to, that's,
Tuesday, coming Tuesday.
right,
whatever
next
date
week,
that is, yeah.
Tuesday. Yeah, well, yeah, as far as what, Bob can just relate, basically,
Sure.
what.
Fundamentally, what we'll talk about on Tuesday is the consultant that was hired to look at the land along the river and issues there, has developed a plan for remedial testing. That's done. And that's in Jeremy's possession. You'll see it on Tuesday evening. Now it's a question of executing same, which would probably, whenever it occurs, it'll probably be a 2-week period.
Right, and this is
But-
all in regards to that delay in an RFP.
Right, because we're
of,
concerned about what conditions may exist along the shore which have not technically been tested to date. And good news, so far to date, EPA is willing to add the cost of that analysis into their grant to be funded by the EPA.
so basically nothing else is going
good
on.
service, good service.
The only other thing to report is, the farmer's market is more popular than ever, and it's doing really great, and everybody loves it, and if it ever left the tannery, everybody would be very upset.
I'm very upset.
Okay.
So they're back.
Oh, they're back there, and it's, yeah, it's,
Yeah. Anything more on the Shirt Tail Park plans or Barrett's Cove? No. No. Every once in a while, check on Barrett's Cove and everything, and I have to say, it looks very nice this year. The beach area is not a very expensive beach area, but it seems like it's very clean.
Well, water level's high this year,
right.
so
Yeah.
it's not like miles of beach like it has in the past.
Still high?
Yeah.
It's just still the smoking. The smoking of like both marijuana and cigarettes is unreal. Unreal.
Really? Oh, I wonder if we should put some more no smoking signs up.
in regards to that,
I mean, what are you gonna do?
I won't name names, because I don't know the name,
Yeah, right.
but a park and rec truck pulled up at a facility.
Yeah,
I won't even say that, because that'll probably tell you who it is.
smoking,
Smoking, not only smoking, but then throwing the butt on the ground.
okay.
Park and rec.
Yeah, thank you.
So you might make a general
Reminder.
reminder to workers that that's a very bad example.
what about the rowing club? What was their comment?
I just put that down as their schedules, they've got quite a lot of activities going on.
They have their
this year.
regatta September 9th, I believe.
Right.
And that's a good event for them. They did write a letter thanking us for letting them park their skulls in the lot early summer.
Because of the
The
bots.
moths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're long gone from the parking area and back in, so.
How long does our contract go with them where they get everything for free?
Well, it's a year
Another 2
concert.
years, isn't it?
Another
Oh,
2 years?
maybe, it's more than
I thought it
one.
was a 3-year.
I'm not sure.
It was a
There's
5-year
not- there-
agreement to begin with.
There's not supposed to be 5-year agreements.
No, I don't think there is.
Was.
It was 3.
I think it's, surely not 5.
No.
Surely not
Was
5.
originally.
And not now,
but-
I don't think it is now. And besides, changes like that, you can always invoke it any time. They work with us, I'm not too concerned about that. They're more concerned about moorings in the lake than they are anything else right now. so.
And thanks to Tom or whoever got out and fixed the Bog Bridge
Oh, yeah.
stuff, the railing and stuff like that.
Yep.
That's been.
And then I also had them go out, Jumping Rocks picnic table was missing a seat for a long time, so they fixed that.
Okay.
The picnic table. So Dale took them around to fix a few projects out there.
Okay, yeah, we talked about moving some.
What's the update on the Lake Beach steps? When are they being?
So the bid was awarded to Ford Enterprises last week.
Correct.
They came in substantially lower than the only other bidder. I mean, there was two bids, so, and Dan is who's currently working on our River Walk project. And I actually just spoke to Dan yesterday. Him and Jeff have, another idea on, you've heard about it too? Okay. So they're gonna use the granite steps, which was controversy to the public, that we were just gonna pour cement and have a cement be what?
The base.
The base. So, but I don't know when he's gonna start, but he'll let me know as soon as he's ready to go. So it's on our list soon to be done.
Good. Okay,
Yep.
fine.
I see you've skipped over lobster ride, but I'd love to report on
No,
that.
that's- Yeah,
We just had our debrief meeting Monday, and between the four organizations that ran it, three of the nonprofits, if you will, got the proceeds from that, and that's the Penn Bay Y, the BCM, the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, and us, the Snow Bowl. We brought in over $30,000 of profit, so that each three of us got 10, so.
That's great.
great,
Yep.
good.
And we're slowly easing the BCM out, so in the future, it will just be the Y and us. And thanks to Side Country, they put in a lot of effort as well, so, yeah. Yeah. But it was a good event. We could use a lot more volunteers, so next year you guys need to put it on your calendars.
Yeah.
19.
Of July. So,
I was playing golf that day at the.
that was a hot day.
Yes, it was. That
We all
was
have
the,
excuses, but then I think that's one thing that is on the list as far as getting volunteers, and it's not just this committee. And, you know, it's something that all organizations have an issue with. But for town events like that, there's gotta be some better way that either through the newspapers or other things we can drag.
Word of
more
mouth,
volunteers.
word of mouth. We have some really cool t-shirts. Just saying.
You know, an affinity group that, you know, wants to
Loves
take
it.
on, you want a piece of, get a piece of it into the, Rotary, and, maybe it's McNemba who wants a piece of it because they see it as a way to promote something.
Or you want to ride it on Sundays, but you can help Saturday.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can pay for it or something like
Good,
that.
good.
I'm gonna have to bug out.
Okay, fine, I think we're about
So
finished.
just a some recommendation, you're meeting on the 18th, so I'm gonna think about putting you all in October on the select board, give yourself some time to think about this. You should probably, on the 18th, work on the work plan, quantifying, do whatever you can. Remember, this is the mechanism by which the select board knows what all you're doing, yes.
Right.
And also, by the way, it helps Beth downstream, not, 6 months in advance of what kind of number she wants to request of the budget committee
Yeah.
for taking care of our parks. I felt strongly in the past, and I still do, that a lot of the money that she has to deal with is way too little to fund and maintain our parks. If you have it, you gotta fix it, you gotta maintain it.
Right.
And
Yep.
versus, by the way, I use this discussion a lot when people say, well, we need to do this new thing. I say, you know what, we gotta fix what we have first.
Yes.
And so it really is really important, and I know you're not cost estimators, but if there's some way of quantifying in relative terms, this is,
Yeah.
6 figures, this is 5 figures, that's fine. But at least we know, and what you recommend as priorities for the committee to work on, so the select board understands that part. So I'll think about putting you on, maybe the first meeting in October, because it's September 17th is too short a time period.
Oh, yeah, no,
You know, that's not gonna work.
October's fine.
Okay,
I'm just
we'll
trying
talk,
to
we'll
think
talk
of
about it.
which one
We'll
would be
figure out
best.
when.
Yeah.
It's not,
Okay.
but we're doing with all committees. We've already had 3 or 4 go through, and Pathways is one.
Yeah.
And we need to do the rest.
Okay, fine.
Also, one more thing. Windjammer Festival is August 30th, Friday, and 31st, Saturday. Public Landing. We'll be there all weekend.
Cool. Volunteers.
Anyone that would like to come either sell merchandise, help with the gates,
The gate is gonna be top of the hill,
Yeah.
right beside.
just letting the
I was about to say
fishermen in and
Cappy's,
out.
But you know where I mean.
Yes. Up by Sea Dog.
G-Dog,
Yeah.
yeah. Just call it Cappy's.
Before I go, I would raise one question. The access to the public landing, what's that road called? Does it have a
It
name?
doesn't have a name. I think it's called the public landing access.
Okay, so the public landing access, my assumption is that there's white lines on the side of it demarcate the edge of the roadway. Do we know if that demarcates the edge of what the town owns? The reason
Pretty
is,
much, the other
Does it?
stuff is.
Does it
we've
mark it?
already- We've already gone through this.
did you do that today?
No.
No, but I followed up on the.
Okay.
stuff. You saw
Yeah,
that.
because quite frankly, it's extremely dangerous if you're trying to drive in or out of there, because of course, people are walking, and they can't walk on the quote sidewalk, which maybe isn't truly a sidewalk.
Oh, you're talking about, I was thinking about the access next to
no,
Sea
no.
Dog. You're talking about the actual landing
I'm talking about
access.
the actual landing road
Yeah,
where
that's,
people,
that's
you know,
their
the
own
people who
property.
own the buildings have got stuff hanging out or on the ground there, impinging on people's ability to walk past.
yeah.
So it forces them to walk in the roadway. I don't know if there's any, I don't want to over-regulate people, but it seems like it's a crazy
It
safety
should be
hazard.
vehicle only. The walker should go up by Lily Lupin, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that'll
people-
never happen.
No, yeah.
I know.
But the
but-
traffic being there and everything being there keeps the traffic moving slow. So that's part of the bad, it's part of the good. You see so many people in the roadway, you have to go
But
slow.
you can't walk anywhere but in the roadway because people are putting things up right to the white
But that's
line.
sometimes referred
And I don't
to,
know if that's cool.
sometimes it's referred to as traffic calming measures.
Yes, traffic calming.
I get it, but I think from a safety perspective, forcing people to go in the roadway,
There's only really two businesses that have doors going out onto that
but just
area.
look at it the next time you go down and you'll see there's things hanging off the building that force you to
Okay.
walk in the road. You cannot not walk in the
That
road.
and the sandwich signs that are out there,
Yeah.
you know, that are put out and taken in.
The pathways thought about.
Okay. All right, we're all set? Fine, thank you, everybody. And don't expect to get minutes.
Andrew, you don't have a contact at Kingdom, do you?
Hey,
So we need to turn our mics on.
Did you pass me on? Oh, I got you.
All right, the meeting of the Camden Conservation Commission has come to order, and welcome to anybody who might be listening to this. The first item is approval of the minutes of July 17th. Stephanie circulated them at least twice. Any further revisions or comments? Oh, I'd just like to just remind people that we should respond to Stephanie when she, even if there's, just say, looks good, that's all I need to say. So she knows that everybody has seen it. Treasurer's report. So this was a little bit problematic, I'd almost say, because we're going to discuss it later, is that we are missing about $2,500 from our reserve fund, and Barbara's also missing over $3,000.
The C account?
The SCA account. It's unaccounted
How
for.
much? I'm sorry, missing 3,000?
3,050.
Okay.
Well, I think there's some confusion in the finance and town managers department about how the proper way to use funds are. So that's a discussion that I will be having about that at a later time.
Okay, so recruitment of new CCC members, I must admit, I haven't done anything over the past month about recruiting new members. I think we need to discuss what we need. And one of the big things from my perspective that we need is publicity. Now, Molly has offered to do an article, Molly Mulhern, on boat waste and the whole issue of boat waste and what we've been doing for the harbor. So hopefully she'll do that. She's a great writer. I think much better than all of us, except maybe Barbara.
Well, I'm not going to be in a contest with her. We do have something, I think, coming out in the Camden Herald in the next week or two about the SEA program.
Okay. And how did well, you'll probably get into it, the touch tank go?
It's great.
Well, you have time to
So
get
I
to it.
met with Dee Dee Mann because she wanted to learn more about it. Have she contacted you?
I've spoken to Dee Dee a couple times about actually joining the commission. And
That's what I meant, yeah, because
And
I
she
was trying
seemed a
to.
little reluctant initially, I shouldn't say reluctant, but just conservative is the right match. So we still have to follow up on that. Yes.
Would it be possible to get one of the students, for instance, the high school and Watershed have students that are really active and engaged in the kinds of things we're looking at? And I think having their perspective would be wonderful.
The Energy Committee has had a student from Watershed for the last couple of years. Every year, a student from Watershed has joined. So it's a great idea.
Because I can follow up on that.
Yeah, I would, I guess the question is if we're restricted to 7 people, that maybe we'd have a different denotation rather than a voting member have.
Yeah, but it might be interesting, I mean, I think it would be great to have somebody from the schools regularly with us, perhaps not in.
Yeah.
in that capacity.
So
In
where
terms
is,
of, in terms of publicity, is it publicity about recruiting or publicity about the CCC?
About everything. We've done a lot of stuff. I mean, I can give you an example, the whole issue of polystyrene, unencapsulated polystyrene docks and floats. I told Bob Falciani that I'm especially concerned that we haven't had a mailing to shorefront owners, and they're going to come to 2022, when there's the drop dead date, where all the polystyrene has to be removed from docks. And they'll say, we didn't hear anything. So I've given Audra and Bob, as the chair of the select board, a pamphlet and a cover letter. And then I want to actually do one more modification of that to let people know where they can get docks repaired if they want to.
That mailing's gonna go out to waterfront residents?
Yes, that's the intention. Were you aware of this yet, Mark?
Bob had let me know about it. One thing I want to mention about recruiting, we were looking for new people for a lot of different communities. So the town did a lot of advertising recently, looking for volunteers for different committees to see what showed up. We haven't had a meeting since the results, but what I've heard is there was not much response. It's I think recruiting for committees definitely, unless there's a person, every once in a while you get somebody that says, oh, I'm interested in that, but it's often, who do you know? And maybe we can invite somebody. But I don't believe the advertising campaign that the town has done has produced many results, which is a disappointment.
So we did get people, though, when we were at the voting day, who said they wanted to join. So I think we have to first follow up with those before we do anything
Yeah,
else.
although I think what a lot of them said was they wanted to be part of the commission's work, not necessarily that they wanted to join the
3 or 4
commission.
There were 3.
There were a
so
few,
you
yeah.
can't not follow up with
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
It may be better to wait till September to go after people, because I think everybody is so busy now that the idea of taking
We
anything
did have
else
that
on
woman
is-
show up that was at,
Right.
that was at the voting, and she came to our
Yep.
meeting, so I can't remember her
I
name,
can't remember her
Kathy,
name
maybe.
either. I know she sat there, but I didn't count.
I was-
Kathy sounds right.
I realized I was looking at the wrong agenda, so this was number 7 on our.
Yeah, I know, I'm down there. And I just added the
So,
dock,
I
the
just- I
dock
just
removal,
realized
even
it.
though that's not on it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so there's, 1, 2, 3, 4 at least who have shown an interest in actually joining the CCC.
And Dee Dee May, I think her question was, what are the issues that are before you? She's very interested in lakes and the lake, cleanliness of lakes, the lake and how that's being handled. And so sometimes people want to join for an issue, and I don't know whether I think it's.
Well, I think what we need to do is reach out to all the people.
No.
Having somebody, you're talking about specific interests, having somebody who is specifically interested in the lake, I think would be great.
Maybe you have somebody who's a member of the McGonagall watershed.
I think
That should
she
be,
is.
Is she?
I
Oh,
think
good.
she's very passionate about what's happening with
She
the
is,
lake.
yes, she is. I'm also a member of the.
Oh, perfect. And maybe the Hosmer Pond Association could be another.
Sure.
group.
Yeah, there's, unfortunately, we only have 1 spot,
Because Vicky still is officially on, correct?
and she wants to stay on.
Great,
So we
that's
have one
wonderful.
spot. Okay.
Emailed me an hour ago or so and said she couldn't make tonight's meeting. I didn't give a reason.
We're lucky to have her.
Yeah.
Trees, Mark.
So Select Board got a letter from B.D. Parker the other day mentioning that she's concerned about the lack of tree planting that's going on in Camden. I mean, there's been some through the garden club and stuff like that, but it's been expensive. And we do have a situation where they're going to be doing some new drainage work on Route 1 next spring, I believe, that will dig up the south side of the street from Stop and Go to the end of the commercial side here. That's going to be an interesting project. And we're looking to them to see if there's they'll put in some areas for trees. Because Beatty's whole, and I forwarded it to Roger, I didn't have everybody else's address, so you could forward it around. So I brought it up at the Select Board meeting, and somebody there, and I don't remember who it was, knew that Rockport is doing trees in a different way than Camden is. And it's much less expensive and much more productive. And so we thought that, the commission is the official tree.
Whatever, commission.
Commission, tree warden, whatever's like that maybe it should join the work plan is to look and see, maybe contact somebody on the Rockport Commission to see if they're aware of how their tree thing works and see if we can work to trees, because trees are so important in the whole global warming, sea level rise, the whole education thing. And so I was going to bring that to this meeting and say it's something we'd like to add to the work plan for the commission, to just get more involved in seeing if we can plant some more trees. And maybe find a better way than it's been handled so far.
What I think I'll do, once, is talk to Doug Johnson, because he's so enthusiastic about trees.
Okay.
I don't think he'll come back on the commission, but I think he would like to be the point person, who would get a lot of.
That would be
Does it
great.
have anything to do with that Tree City USA designation that?
Well, that's the commission is the Tree City
Conduit.
conduit or whatever.
Actually,
The garden,
we've never done that. Well, I shouldn't say
Well, it
we never
was,
have.
when Doug was there, it was, and
It's
it's,
his wife, Nancy, who did all the,
right.
it never actually was official CCC business.
Right.
Nancy just did that. I know she wants to give it up, and I said the garden club is the appropriate, but maybe not, you know.
Maybe not, because I think the way they've been going about it, it's an expensive thing. This is just what came up to select board, and somebody else seemed to know more about how we did trees, and that Rockport had a more effective way of doing it. So I said, and I know we've had contact with the Rockport Commission. And
Yeah, oh, yeah, for sure.
So maybe, whoever is designated starts there and says, how are you guys dealing with tree planting? Can we ramp it up?
Yep, Barbara?
Two things. One, it would give us greater buying power because we could deal with a nursery
Yes.
more effectively, whether it was, up the road or Musser Nurseries or something like that. You can buy hundreds of little trees, and we could do an outreach to the schools in terms of smaller trees. And so the schools might have a part in this. I can see a lot of people having a different part in this.
Well, I guess
Once we know what.
I guess there's a program where people, there's a program where we will pay for people to plant trees in the yards, and that's behind because of, it's just fallen behind in getting
Right,
it
that
accomplished.
program was a third the homeowner, a third the town, and a third the garden club.
Right.
And the garden club was dependent on grants from, I forget it's a state organization.
it's where we got one of our,
Right,
grants
well,
from,
we got, exactly, we got a grant from them for the Emerald Ash Borer.
Yeah.
But the garden club never had very much money, so there wasn't very much money.
It was
in the
suggested, I
system.
said it is in the garden club, and it was suggested that it come to this commission. And especially because there's a Rockport Commission as well that we can maybe work with.
Yep.
And, because tree planting, especially with knowing that we're going to lose ash trees in a number of years, it'd be a good idea to get ahead of the game.
Yep,
And obviously, there has to be guidance about native trees and what's
Right.
going to endure
Sure.
and all of that kind of stuff.
So that's, we'd like to add that to the work plan, is to investigate tree planting.
I did, what was I going to say? Just skipped my mind now. Okay.
I mean, we did talk at one point about having a joint meeting with
Yeah, we should do
Rockport,
that
right?
again,
Yeah,
for
maybe
sure.
Some of these things, we could set an agenda of some sort and get
Yep.
their feedback on trees and pick their brains.
Make sure that's in the minutes too, the joint meeting. Yeah.
Done.
I like that. Give her an assignment, and it's done like
Yeah,
that.
it's cool.
All right, boat waste, Abby. What have you been doing?
I saw her at a manhole the other day. I walked past, and it's about 6:30 PM, and there's Abby wrestling with
It
this.
wasn't 6:30 PM, it was the middle of the afternoon, it was raining a little bit.
It was. I thought it was
I've been doing that, I've been continuing testing for the wastewater department, trying to pinpoint pollution sources for them. So I've been driving up and down the roads and trying to look at the limited maps we have up there, trying to connect, where I think the pollution could be coming from via septic systems or just down the streets underground. And so I've spent a lot of time crouched down with my head in a manhole and the flashlight down and trying to see if, most of these pipes are old and corroded. And seeing firsthand that a lot of this infrastructure is just really outdated. And that's a big reason why we have such a problem, which leads me into the 5-inch rain event last week.
I was wondering.
We've had a drought pretty much all summer, and so all the bacteria counts Roger and I saw have been low. And the EPA max for salt water for Enterococci bacteria, which is what we've been testing for, is 500 colonies per 100 milliliters of water. So they've all been well below 500 up until the 5-inch rain event, which makes sense. And so that.
We did about, what, 8 days, 9 days?
More than that,
Okay.
almost 2 weeks.
I must say, I just loved going out in the boat every morning for a half hour collecting the samples, so I've lost track of.
So what happened with the heavy rain? You were to know?
Yeah, I dragged Steve Pixley out in the middle of that. He drove the boat for me. And 5 inches of rain, and the samples were, or the results, the counts were all in the thousands. So the max is 500, that's what the EPA considers a suitable level. And the highest was 19,863 in front of the waterfront restaurant. So at that point, the level is so high that I wonder if it was really unsafe for me to even be putting my hand in the water.
So what was it, 9,000 you said?
19,000.
I'm sorry. I knew there's a
And
zero I was
most
missing.
of our counts are under 100?
Yes, well below 100 most of the time. But all of them except Lake Beach, ironically, given past history there. 563, so a little bit above 500, but the rest of them were all in the thousands. 2 of them were in the teens. So that was likely the result of.
When you say teens, what do you mean by teens?
15,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 2 of them were in the teens. The rest of them were like 8,000, 5,000, 7,000. So in the thousands, still way too high. So likely the result of the drought and everything stopping flow-wise on land, and then it all gets pushed out at once. And so when Steve and I were out there and we were looking where the outfalls were, that it was like someone opened the floodgates, and all the water that was coming out was brown. The harbor itself was brown, and there was a lot of sediment on top of the surface of the water. So that was interesting. And so we've stopped our harbor testing just because of the drought, and I'd like to, before I leave, if there's one more rain event, go out and test just to, back up that theory that it's mostly waterfowl and everything that comes off the land.
Have you gone out this week at all, since it's been 4 or 5 or 6 days since?
We did, no, not this week. I have been testing around town, and those levels are still very high.
Well, we did test for 2 days after the.
Yes, 2 days
so-
afterwards, and it appeared that the harbor flushed itself out well enough that the levels went back down to very low. So they weren't as low as we had seen in the beginning, the first week or so, that were like pretty much non-existent. But it's way, way down from the thousands, which is great to see.
Except that all of that effluent is going into the ocean. And of course, it gets dissipated by the amount of water, but nevertheless, it's going to contain a toxic contamination that we should not be putting into the ocean.
Yeah, I took a couple things away from this. One is we still have a problem with runoff, we can't say whether it's from the houses, and I didn't get down to Bayview to see if the storm drain, or the sewer rather, was overflowing there, but it usually does with 5 inches of rain. So I suspect that's why the waterfront restaurant, because it's right where it is, that's why there's high counts right in front of it, because the sewer is probably overflowing there.
Bayview might have, I didn't ask about Bayview, but I asked about C Street, because that's the other one, and Sheldon told me that C Street didn't overflow. And he thinks it's because the ground was so dry that it took a lot more water for it to sink in and then build up again. So as far as I know, C Street didn't overflow, but Bayview might have. Because around the waterfront where it was 19,000, I did see water coming. I don't know for sure where exactly the pump station is, but there was a spot to the left out towards the harbor on the left side if you're facing the waterfront where water was just coming down. And it didn't even look like it was coming out of any pipe. It was just like free-flowing flood. And so I'm not sure if that was a result of flooding from the pump station or not. I'd have to ask.
Anyhow, if the town needs data to back up its enforcement of the I&I results.
Right. Well, we have
You've got
taken,
it.
we've taken, Select Board took steps. There's 60-something people that haven't fixed the discrepancies that we found. And some of it is trying to get, some of it's expense, some of it is getting a contractor in a busy season, but they've said that they will. There were 22 people at last count that had not replied, not allowed inspections at all. And we've started lawsuits. We okayed lawsuits we picked 4 to start with, because lawsuits are expensive. It's the only way to enforce it. The fine associated with not replying is incredibly expensive. It's $100 a day for non-compliance. So we will, with publicity, go after the first 4 people that were chosen to, with lawsuits, to try and get that access. And I would suspect lawsuits, addressing a $100 a day fine will help bring the other 22 back into.
Yeah, and so once we fix all the connections where the stormwater is going into the sewer system and therefore overflowing the sewer system during rain events, once that's all fixed, then we can see if there's additional problems with runoff that we need to address. I suspect there is. I mean, I expect after a prolonged drought, you have dog poop and everything else that gets into the water that makes it especially bad.
Yeah,
So-
I would be interested because, thanks to conservation and everybody else, the fact that we're no longer having people feeding ducks and things like that, I think is, the population is not as strong as it used to be, so hopefully that's making a big difference.
We are still having people feeding
We
ducks.
do, should I raise this now, or, I mean, there is a concern among some of the people at the harbor about one boat in particular that is still feeding ducks. And so I think we need to look at that.
There's a boat that's feeding ducks?
Yeah.
One of the day sailors.
Really?
So,
you-
yeah, the thing that we don't have is,
Yeah.
I don't have a photograph, I don't have anybody who's actually says, I saw so-and-so
Yeah.
feeding.
Well, I do have people who say they've seen it, but I don't have pictures of it.
Well, I think
had-
that's,
Who's,
I can talk with you about it. I don't know if we want to talk about it.
we'll
right now.
talk about later.
yeah, okay.
We want to put names out
Yeah.
I
without.
just heard little kids overheard the little kids at the county public library, hey, Dad, let's go feed the ducks, and they're like, okay, I mean, I think it's because, more people from out of state are coming here.
Yeah,
I think that's where that's coming
It's
from.
an awareness thing. too.
Yeah.
It happens, it's way better than it used to be.
Yeah, okay.
And if there's somebody that is based here doing it, then it needs to be discussed with them.
Sure. Yep, so,
I didn't
I
want
had
to be
that
that
discussion
person to
with
go
a
up to
friend
the
of
little
mine,
kid
and
and.
she's like, I'm gonna feed the ducks. I'm like, you can't feed the ducks.
Yeah.
She's like, we've always fed the ducks. It's not a big deal. I'm like,
It
it's
is
a big deal. You have to do this. This is important. It's another thing that we're gonna do.
I've done the same, I've gone up to people and politely said, the signs around, there's a reason we can't feed the ducks. One, it's harmful to the ducks.
Yeah.
And 2, it causes increased pollution in the harbor. So,
Okay.
the one interaction I had went really well. It wasn't, it wasn't antagonist, it was like, oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
So
that's
I think that's in general. The other part, there's 2 more things. I think we do need to keep testing with every rain event, because every rain event's different. Different amounts of rain, and I'm not talking about a couple tenths of an inch, anything over an inch. We don't really know how much pollution will go in with the varying amounts of rain and under what conditions. And that becomes important because we need to know when to close Lake Beach. Certainly, Lake Beach should have been closed with 5 inches of rain, but I'm sure it wasn't.
I think one of
Now
the.
I've got the data to say, yeah, it
Yeah.
should be closed.
It'd be interesting to see, once we hit fall, and hopefully we have regular rain on a regular basis, then we can sort of gauge it. It's, like Abby said, it's really hard in the summer when there's no rain at all.
Yep.
And then a huge storm,
That's why these
Skews it.
levels went as high as they did, is
yeah,
because
it
there was
skews everything.
no rain
But
for
once
so long.
once we're having rain once or twice a week on a regular basis, it'll be interesting to have the stats then and see what we have.
Exactly.
And also there is long-term plans. We're working on how to deal with sea level rise in the harbor and all the rebuilding that needs to be done, which would include the pump station. So hopefully, because those will need to be raised, and with all the work done on the wastewater plant, hopefully we can solve the problems of those overflowing and flooding the harbor as well, which would be good.
So the final good thing I took away from this is the harbor actually flushes quite well. I had been told with no data that our harbor doesn't flush very well. Well, actually, over 24 hours, it flushed out almost all of this huge amount of coliform bacteria. So, would you agree with all that, Abby?
Yeah, you wanted to make a point, though.
Well, I have a question about your testing. It doesn't distinguish between animal and human. Because that seems like it's kind of a
That would,
really important issue here.
that
Is
would
that,
cost more money. You send it off to University of New Hampshire. Dave Bolster's just done that before with certain problematic campsites, but no, it's just enterococci bacteria. There's no mammal versus human.
because in one case, it means that our system's getting overwhelmed and it's flooding in, or it could mean that it's, goose poop or dog poop or, and it
Chipmunks
doesn't
or
really lead
squirrels.
us, it doesn't lead us toward a
My
solution here.
suspicion, well, I'm not saying don't do it, is that we'll see everything. In other words, we'll see human, dog, goose.
But
After
does
a
it give,
prolonged-
if you were to do that testing, if we send it out, does it give, say,
Relative amounts?
17,000 is human and 2,000 is dog, or,
I have the data that Dave sent me before I started working for him from the test results he sent off to the lab, and I can look at what it breaks down for you.
That would be really
and
interesting.
I know it was, I think it was like $100 or something to
I don't
send.
know how expensive it was, but
I
he
think it was a
doesn't do
fair
it very
chunk of
often.
money, but, yeah.
Does he have history of doing it before we started doing all the house inspections and corrections? I would imagine he does, but it's never,
Not DNA testing for
It's never been-
species.
He
Is
did it recently. He sent
Yeah.
off the test results
It
recently.
was, the reason he did it was for a problematic site, which
Okay.
has stayed problematic, and we haven't found the source. And so the question was it human or animal? This was up by Pearl, but in that area of
Near
Mechanic.
wetlands, right?
Yeah, there's a wetland there, and it turned out it was human. So, and I guess we still haven't found the source.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, just speaking from the sites that he's given me to regularly test and then try to pinpoint is that it's been hard mostly because the drought applies to everywhere. And so, I mean, at some point I stopped being able to be able to collect the sample itself at 4 of the sites. And so when you don't even have a flow to track, you can't do anything with it. And then I try to go up the streets, I peer down into there's only so much you can do. And then there's, I have to stay on the public roads and the public property as well. And most of these sources are coming from you'd think from people's properties, or at least I'd like to be able to walk through, because there's, for example, Maple has been problematic this year, and Cam 8, as well as Willow, and Cam 8 is also a problem, which is at the end of Mechanic. So Maple and Willow, they meet, and they both, being problematic themselves, meet and then turn into Cam 8, which has been a huge problem for a long time. And then there's a stream between Maple and Spruce, and I've run out of options of places to look. And so ideally, I'd like to look around the stream and the properties that surround it, because then, you'd think I'd find a problem. I mean, it's like running out of options. Okay, the only option left is to knock on doors and ask. They're probably gonna say no, not be too, welcoming. Or go on private property, but I can't do that. So it's tough.
But it sounds as if we might get to a point where it's a similar situation to coming to people's houses and looking in the basement, but it needs to be something authorized by the select board.
So, but, let me just say that all those houses in that area, with except maybe one of the 22 or so, have been inspected. So.
But inspected in a different way.
I don't think so. I mean, in other words, if it was unclear, dye tablets were put down to see where the
Okay.
effluent came out. So I know Dave's done a lot of that. And part of the problem is if there's something occult, people flush their toilets intermittently. So the fact that there's low flow in general and intermittent flushing of toilets means that it's really hard to pinpoint a source.
Well, there's probably somebody somewhere who has dealt with this before, and it sounds as if we need to take it another step so that Abby has access.
Essentially, they're polluting.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, there's no
So-
question about it. I know this is driving Dave Ballstreet's nuts. I know he's frustrated because he can't find it.
Yeah, but if he needs to
He is,
access.
he is looking very hard for the
Yes.
problem. And one of the reasons we do it is the main DEP, is we are in violation because of the pollution. And we have to fix, sort of, the town will get fined.
We've already gotten fined, but like a light
That's right,
fine.
it's, we've gotten fined, but we're trying to
So
alleviate.
question, when you said the infrastructure's old, do we ever look at people's connection from their house, their sewer line to the public line to see if those are
That's the
intact?
illicit, that's the INI that's been going on.
But if.
This
let's
one
say-
was done to your house.
No, but I had my storm drain going into my sewer line. But if you just tested my sewer line,
Right.
how do you not
We
know
didn't
it's
necessarily
leaking
test the
into the
sewer.
earth?
Going into the houses and looking to see, make sure that the stormwater is not being hooked up to the sewer line and vice versa.
We're not
No, I
testing
get
that
that.
the sewer
That's-
line makes it out to the
That's my
public
point.
piping that carries it away safely. They could have a broken connection
That's my
across their
point.
lawn
Yeah.
in their sewer, and we're not testing for that.
Actually, we are. So, yes, Dave takes a camera, puts it up inside and looks for any,
When they did that? I don't know.
this goes on regularly. In other words,
But it's
From the
not,
public
it was
line
not part
to
of that
houses.
inspection.
Right.
We do it from the street in.
so I know that on Willow Street, for example, he's put a camera up all through there looking,
Cameras down multiple.
right, trying to find sewer going into the storm water.
The only reason I ask, in California, when you sell your house, you have to have a sewer lateral inspection done at your homeowner's expense or the buyer's, and if it's failed, you have to fix it.
Yeah.
So it's the homeowners that are paying for the inspection from your house to the line, not the other way up, because
Yeah.
mine could be leaking, not to say it is, right at my house. Does his thing look all the way up to my house?
Are you saying it's all your fault?
No, I'm not, I guess, we don't have a problem on my street, but.
Okay,
I'm just curious
yeah.
on that
All
old
I know is,
infrastructure.
yeah, Dave's well aware of this and has done extensive, I'm not an expert on this, but I've been doing that with him for the last 3 years through our interns. And we have found 3 houses that were directly dumping sewage, not intentionally, but unknown, into our stormwater system. Those have been repaired.
We do also have a problem with, I understand from the guy who was working on that drain where I saw Abby later working, there are some drains that are sinking. We have sinkholes, and he said that had to do with the age of the pipes that are under, for instance, the state-owned roads, and he said, the state's got a big problem because these things need to be worked on.
They're working on fixing all that. We're
Yeah,
replacing
good.
pipes on a
And that should
constant
help.
basis.
That
And they're
should help.
inspecting all the pipes too.
Yeah.
There's cameras.
So that's really good news.
Oh, yeah. No, Dave has been intensely going to everything. That's one of the reasons that the south side of Main Street is
Yeah.
going to be all dug up.
Great.
I remember when Route 1 in, like, right at French and Braun, that sinkhole we had a couple
Yes.
months ago, and I remember I was like a couple days into my internship, and a guy came in, and he's like, okay, so here's my bill for the car, I just went into your sinkhole, made it worse. And,
Yeah.
and I think Janice was like, well, that's a state road, so you can't bill us, you're gonna have to bill the state for the damage to your car, and he's like, he was really flustered and angry that he couldn't give his bill to
Yeah,
Janice.
Yeah.
But it was the funny interaction with,
Yes.
but the sinkhole, it was massive, and I'm seeing
We
multiple.
found one last year on Bayview, right in front of Cuzzy's, and I told, there were guys from the town nearby, and they went and fixed it, but
I
It's
think
an issue.
it's a national problem.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, it
infrastructure that's 100, plus years old and we're addressing it as effectively and as aggressively as we can, which I think is great. I wonder what's going on in the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And even the rest of Maine, where they're not taking it as seriously as we do. I'm very happy that we're aggressively going after this problem.
I want to move on because there's not a lot, as a commission, we're going to be able to do to make a positive impact here, other than the very good work that the interns
thank
we've
you, Abby.
been doing. Next Tuesday, Abby's going to be presenting to the select board the recommendations from her research, and Bob and Abby and myself and Steve Pixley and Jimmy, whose last name I can't remember,
Jimmy Leo.
Jimmy Leo.
Yeah, all the input we've gotten from Lyman Morse as well, in terms of what we can recommend to the town to address the issue of boat waste. I mean, the good news is that our testing shows that when everybody is conscious of what's going on and the fact that we're doing testing, we found no evidence of anybody dumping raw sewage from their boats, even during the Camden Classic.
Really? Because they were 3 or 4 abreast. I'm like, oh God, this
Yeah.
is gonna be
Now-
bad news.
Went up slightly, but they were
Okay.
all well below the
Okay.
500.
No, it was clear that Abby and I were out there with
Yeah.
the harbor master's boat taking samples, so everybody knew it. But that's, I think what it says is if we have a strong public awareness that voluntarily people will do the right thing. To me, it meant that, we don't need to do dye tablets and having a more punitive enforcement. We just need good publicity and testing at appropriate times and be seen to be testing, so that.
Some of the
people know.
problems may be local problems and not people coming in.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it could be, yeah.
yeah. I unfortunately will not be here next Tuesday. I will be out of town, so.
Okay.
But I talked to Abby at length the other day to learn about what.
Great, and
Recommendations
I think, my sense is the select board is strongly behind everything
Absolutely.
that Bob and Abby and all of us have been working on, so. And Abby and I will go over Friday or next Monday to her presentation. When are you leaving?
I'm leaving Saturday morning.
Okay, so,
I'll be gone for the whole week.
all right, okay. If you happen to have it done by Friday, then maybe grab Mark too, just to,
I'll be here. Yep.
yeah, just to review the slides or whatever.
Okay.
It'd be great. Okay. Barbara, Stewardship Education
We
Alliance.
don't have future role CCC Harbor Committee.
Oh, okay, no, that's,
this
I missed
structured.
that. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. So,
It's easier for me.
yeah, I mean, clearly, one of the things that needs to be worked out by the select board is what is everybody's role in this? And my own thought was from the very beginning, the people who should be most concerned about the water quality in the harbor is the Harbor Committee. But that wasn't happening. And, I saw lots of ways that we could
Yeah.
improve
The
water
model
quality.
harbors that Abby spoke about at the last meeting, they were all conducted by harbor masters. The enforcement and
Yeah.
policies.
I mean, the strictest enforcement programs that exist they are in existence because of the fact that a harbor's either gotten shut down or was about to get shut down. But, I mean, the Avalon Bay one, where they use dye tablets, and if you tamper with any bit of the inspection process, you can get banned from the harbor for up to 2 years. Everyone's fully compliant with it, they're fully behind it, because obviously, big boating community, much bigger than here, and everyone's livelihoods on the water, revolve around having the harbor open and having it be able to be used by people who live there and people who come in. So my thinking behind not using dye tablets, but, holding everyone, not just the people who are contracted under the town, but absolutely everybody who comes in and who is a resident here, who has a mooring or slip holders, holding them accountable, because we don't want to get to that point where we are, if we have a wetter summer, we can only predict the effects of climate change up to a certain point, and if we have a consistently wet summer and these levels are in the thousands on a daily basis even, we can't afford any extra pollution from potential or perceived or otherwise, we can't afford it from a boat. And so that's why I think we need to, address every pollution source, whether it be perceived or,
I think
quantifiable.
every contract that's signed for a mooring or a business or anything else should have rules dictating how they have to deal with it.
And has the Harbor Committee gotten personally a copy of the report, each of the members?
Yes. I presented to them, so a similar presentation that I give to you guys, and I got only a few questions, but they were mainly revolved around, I had the common mindset of, or reaction. Well, why should we believe this is happening when you can't measure? Like, we need to measure the amount of, but they didn't seem to understand that you can't pinpoint that this fecal coliform bacteria is coming from this boat, because human is human. We can split it down between mammal and human and dog and bird, as I'm seeing here, and, but beyond that, you can't be able to tell significantly whether it's coming from the land or boats. And so we need to, despite that, you know, it's the right thing to do, as Mark was telling me the other day, is to address this as best we can.
And I think that's what we found this whole time that we've been looking at the watershed. You know, we can't say it's this particular thing, so we're just gonna
You have to deal with everybody.
do all of it.
And one of the things we do, it's a brand-new harbor committee. We dissolved the old one and reconstituted, and it was either their first or second, I think it was their second meeting they've had. So they're still trying to get their grounding on what they're going to be doing and what they're working on. And it's developing, but it's going to take time.
We had an excellent meeting last week with Lyman Morse, and I can say that, to summarize their views, that the success of their business is dependent upon the health of the harbor.
Absolutely.
And they realize that and want to do everything to work with the town to make sure the harbor is as pristine and pollution-free as possible.
And that's true for almost all of the real estate dealers, for restaurants, for shops, for anybody who's using the water. I personally disagree with you about the dye tablets, because I think if you don't have something that's that cut and dry, obvious, you have to put in a great deal of human power on a daily basis, a rigorous watching and doing something that would be much more expensive than just requiring a dye tablet.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a whole bunch of things that we'll be doing. I don't want to go over our meeting, but I mean, one of the key things to address that is collecting good data on boat pump outs.
Yeah.
Because that'll tell us if somebody is actually not getting pumped out.
Right, yeah, that would be a big help.
All right, Barbara, let's move on.
Okay, I think I can be pretty fast with this. Thanks to Wayne for helping with these stands. We have now if you could pass them around, we have the rack cards. I've put them in all of the obvious places and a few not so obvious places. We only printed 500 because we hope to have a website. We don't have an address on there to which people can easily make a donation, but that would be one of the things to have on the website. We had the touch tank last week and this week. I counted 208 people today, and I'm sure there were some I missed.
A lot more after I signed.
Yes, yeah. And there would be floods of, families and people getting on boats and off boats. There weren't as many children this time, but there were some children who clearly loved it, and I can send you photographs later. There are some issues with it we'll go into, not now, but, in some ways it's, I was sorry that we only had it twice. I was sorry that the time was shorter because of Herring Guts commitments, but we'll work that out. It basically, I thought, was very good. I would like to do a mailing in the fall, probably late September, early October, including this card and some, a letter and information about what we're doing, because although we've raised quite a lot of money over the last 18 months, we need more. And I'm going to meet with Lyman Morse in, sometime in September. We had to keep putting it off because of their commitments during the summer. But they've said that this is the kind of thing that they would like to support. And I think their support would be terrific, not only for financial reasons, but because of their expertise, because of the community that they work with. And so I think that they are interested. We'll see what happens. And there are a number of others.
Who would your mailing go to?
I know Josh Moore there, and he and Drew and I are going to meet sometime in September. It just, we kept having times and then it just didn't quite work because of people's travel plans.
No, but who would your mailing go to?
Oh, who would the mailing, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. First of all, anybody I know. And second, names that I can get from other people, of people who might be interested. I mean, we might do something through the schools as well as, you know, one of the things I'd like to do is develop a good mailing list. And we've been getting people to sign up, say whether or not they are interested in what we're doing, so they
You're
would.
talking about postage mail or email?
Both.
Okay.
We do have, this is the second week of a display at Camden National Bank. Thank you for bringing the sign. And we've been through a lot of, I have Swedish Fish for my book stuff. So we've been going through a lot of Swedish Fish. I don't know if that means that people are actually looking at the exhibit or just taking the fish. But
What's Swedish Fish?
it's a kind of little
Candy,
candy.
little
It's a
gummy
fish
candy.
candy, so
Okay.
on my fish book, it kind of
Headed
floats.
over to Camden National as soon as the meeting's over. Oh, they're closed.
It's closed, yes. Anyhow, we've gone through a lot of that. Kim Kimball, who's head of Rockport CC, and I have talked about a whole lot of things. I think she's away right now because I've been trying to reach her, but I will reach her soon. One of the things that she suggested, which I would absolutely love to do, is a green fair. And I've done them twice before in Massachusetts, and I think it could be enormously successful. One of the people who came to the Touch Tank with his child today turns out to be a chef in town, and when I was talking with him, I said, you know, what if we had you all come and show people, or what if one of the events could be something like having you all show how to cook some of the fish that are now available, which were not in the past.
Is that Brian Beggarly?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. Because I
We're
know
on-
his,
we're
his-
on
his son is the
whatever.
age that would make sense.
Well, it may well have been, but he's a really good chef. I know where he works. And when we did a fair in Massachusetts, we had all sorts of vendors, all sorts of programs, speakers. It was really fun. We had 250 people for the first one and 450 people for the second one. We got some state funding. There were all sorts of things. But I just want to throw that out, so.
As a
at some
joint
point-
effort with Rockport.
Yeah.
So a big fair. It's not just about harbor, it's about anything green?
Anything green.
Okay.
But it could start small, you know, we're talking with the SEA group about doing something at the library, so that the kids who have been a part of these things, and the two teachers who went to Herringut, who, by the way, I met with last week, and they both absolutely loved it. But so that we could have perhaps a small presentation at the library, or for the select board or whatever. So that's a little PR thing. There is also, Susan Mustovich from the Camden Herald interviewed me about what we're doing, and something should appear at some point. But other issues that I'd like us to think about, and this is not so much SEA, but you know, the ducks, the smoking. I noticed in the summer, for instance, many of the people who work in the restaurants who come to Camden to do that smoke, and there is a lot more cigarette butt litter. I don't know what's happening with that,
And
but
where is that cigarette butt litter? The harbor?
I noticed it on Union Street, because that's where I live.
I noticed it down right on the harbor landing,
Yeah.
on the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And what are what's the smoking laws in Camden?
You can't.
You can't smoke, but we don't enforce
Can't
them.
smoke anywhere?
I can't give you the
I'm just-
facts. You're not supposed to smoke in any of the town area,
The town area,
parks or
okay.
anything like that. But
Which would mean, I think, you're not supposed to smoke as you walk down the street, but there's a lot of people smoking in
Well, I
town.
never see signs, I wouldn't know what the smoking reg is.
Yeah.
I mean, you see
Yeah,
in
we would-
hospitals, no smoking within 50 feet, whatever, you know, places have signs, but not that you want to
think there's a
plaster
sign down
Camden
near
with
the harbor.
signs.
there are some signs,
There
I
are some
think.
signs?
Because there's some collection places
Yeah.
for cigarette butts.
There's one of those cigarette
Yeah.
Butlers or whatever they're called.
It's not the Butler, it's not the one I was hoping they would use, but they
It's
had good
invisible,
reasons. It's
unfortunately, the one
invisible,
that's down
exactly.
there.
Yeah. But anyhow, I just throw that out as, you know, dogs, ducks, smoking, all of that stuff. I think when
Dogs
we.
and ducks are smoking?
No, I hope not. And dark skies, that's another one I think is really important that we need to think about. So,
We're working on that. You're aware that we are in the process of purchasing, we're taking over our streetlights from CMP.
Yes.
And they're beginning to become LED and dark street oriented.
great.
So that's
And
in
if
the
we can do
process.
PR on that, I think if people understand, I mean, Bar Harbor's done a really good job of that, so there's a lot to learn from them. But it's very bad for wildlife. The light pollution is very bad for migrating birds and bats, and maybe it's bad for the brown-tailed moth, so that would be
Like
good.
crazy, so any
Yes,
oak
I
tree
know.
near there is.
But I think that's it. I think we're doing well. We're poised to kind of take the next step.
All right, thank you. We've already talked about CC member recruitment, and for the Coastal Mountain Nature Program, I put that as for information, so you can just cut and paste right into the
I'm
minutes.
typing on the agenda.
All right,
It's staying,
excellent. Any other
say
Uh,
yes.
things that people want to bring up, any other issues before we close? If not,
Going twice? I'll go turn the mics off.
yep, turn the mic.
Minutes.